say that that will also be considered, because there are two positions. Do what every one of you who has asked a question and outline everything, and the other one from a more different position is let the due process happen as regards things like, was this laundering of money? Was it the issue of how much money was there? Was there any torture? And all those related questions. So I'd like to hold on to that whilst I give consideration to the positions that we have also put to me in the National Assembly. And I do that with respect because, as Zianda correctly says, I'm a process person. The process must unfold. What I will, however, say, if I were to be charged, yes, the processes in the governing party have to unfold in the ANC. As you well know, I have offered to go myself on a voluntary basis to the Integrity Commission, and I will be seeing them. The date is yet to be set. And I felt that following the 54th conference, where conference said if there are allegations against any one of us, we should present ourselves to the Integrity Commission and not wait to be called. And I have opted not to be called, but to go there up front. So that is a process I'd like to follow, and I'd like you to accept that, one, I'm not going to run away to some place and not be available in time to be able to respond to whatever issues that you may want to put, but I'd like the due process to unfold in relation to this matter, including questions like, have I made a statement to the Hawks or whatever, and that too will unfold in time. In relation to Juanita's question about Arthur Fraser was at Director General level, the SSA. Thereafter, he was transferred to the prisons or corrections, and we still thought that from other points of view that he would be able to make a contribution, and in the end his contract came to an end. He has done what he has done, and he has the right, as any citizen has, to report criminality if they believe that there has been. So that is the right of our citizens that we all have. With regard to the Eskom dirt burden, this is a dirt that has ballooned to well over 450 billion rand, and it has ballooned because there's just been overpayment for some of the power stations that we've built, and Eskom's expenditure has just been growing by leaps and bounds, and therefore it has had to borrow. I was very encouraged some months ago, and a year or so ago, when the trade union movement tabled a proposal at NEDLEC, a proposal that said that the trade unions, through their pension funds, would be able to have the debt converted into equity, which would then be held by their pension funds. That matter has been in discussion at the PIC level as well as the GEPF level, that is the Government Employees Pension Fund. And it's a matter that can still be taken forward. I saw a great deal of merit in the matter, and I didn't really see it as a matter that could collapse government employees' pension funds, because by their very nature, those pension funds are long-term, and they are the employees of the government are the beneficiaries, and not all of them will retire at the same time. So I did see a lot of merit. It is a proposal or proposition that is still on the table. The questions that have been raised by Du Plessis fall within the realm of what I said earlier. And Zianda Ngobo's question about the public protector, you did say, what about the public protector?
The timing, Mr. President.
Oh, the timing.
The timing, because, I mean, if you're going to say, Mr. President, that perhaps, the reason why I suspended her, and we know it's your prerogative, was because, the nature of the charges against her required you just to ensure, the sanitization of the office, for lack of a better phrase. Why didn't you do it before? And why didn't you, like the usual process person that you are, at least wait for the judgment to be handed down before suspending her? Because one would assume that you wouldn't have known which way the judgment would go, the one that was handed down this morning in relation to this very impeachment process.
Yes, on the timing, we've been dealing with this matter for a considerable amount of time. And in fact, as early as March, we were dealing with it, where after receiving a letter from the Speaker of the National Assembly, I wrote to the Public Protector and said, in terms of Section 1943 of the Constitution, the President has the power to suspend an official, high-ranking official like the Public Protector once there are processes in the National Assembly that have been commenced to remove her. And I said, I'd like you to give me reasons why I shouldn't do so. And that whole process took quite a long time. I'd given her 10 days, and there's been back and forth responses that even went way beyond that 10 days, having started in March. Now, obviously, she had raised a number of issues such as conflict, and raised issues such as could have been involved in judicial capture, myself, and the Zondo Commission, and Bosasa, and a whole range of other issues. And I took her representations and analyzed each one of them, and wrote back that I thank her for the representations that she has made as to why she shouldn't be suspended. And I went through all of them, gave her a 9-page letter where all this is detailed. And I said, on the premises that have been covered in the letter, I do not believe that, one, there's a conflict of interest. And she had also said that there are either potential or pending investigations that involve me. And I said, an investigation per se does not in itself create a conflict of interest, because it may either turn out positive or negative, and she would have other protections as well. So, having gone through all those arguments, I then decided, because the process in Parliament had started in earnest, and as it has now, that the Constitution entitles me to suspend her. And all these processes were open, were public, and there was nothing underhand or hidden. And as regards the lawsuit that she had launched, I did ask for time frames. I said, give me a process of time frame. I did not know that a judgment would be coming out as early as yesterday or so. But I felt that I should still go ahead, notwithstanding that. So the issue of timing has to be looked at in the historic processes that had taken place. It was not an immediate term event, and it was not really even linked to the investigation that she argues she has launched in regard to the robbery at the farm. I also did say that it is the office of the public protector remains. Once the public protector is suspended, the work of that office does not come to an end. It continues. So the deputy public protector would be able to take the work forward, grounded on the principles of no prejudice, no favor, and impartiality. So if those are the principles that should guide anyone in that office, then we should not be concerned as to who does the work. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. We'll take now the second round. Okay, I promised this gentleman to be the first one. Gentleman in the grey suit, ENCA. I've noted the other hand of. I'll start with you when you get to the first one. Yes.
Thank you very much. My name is Lu from China's Xinhua News Agency. Your Excellency, would you use BRICS partnership to achieve some of the national priorities, and what sectors are you looking at? And what does South Africa want to achieve when you meet with other BRICS leaders later this year at a BRICS Leaders Summit? Thank you very much.
Hi, Mr. President. My name is Bulelani from the SABC. Basically, I mean, you've said and acknowledged that you received a lot of counsel from the political parties yesterday during the debate, and one would have probably hoped that you would have slept on that counsel. But there are just some basic questions that do not warrant for us to go into the merits of the criminal investigation. The one that needs to be answered is why would you store so much cash in foreign currency in your game farm? The second one is how much, because you've already indicated publicly in Limpopo that the amount that is being bandied about in the media is not accurate. In fact, what you allege to have been stolen there is far less. And the third question is, when was this criminal complaint, as you've acknowledged in your reply today, when was the criminal complaint laid and by who? The second counsel that you did receive yesterday was that, as you've said earlier, that you intend to go to the ANC's Integrity Commission to go and explain your side of the story. But equally, ordinary South Africans and South Africa at large are expecting you to take them into confidence around what is now seen or perceived as a suspicious incident. Why do you view the ANC much more important than South Africa in terms of taking them into confidence? And lastly, Mr. President, do you agree with the sentiments by some political parties that you should step aside pending the finalization of this criminal investigation? Because the argument is made that you cannot expect an official from SAPS or from the Hawks to be investigating a sitting president. I thank you.
Mr. President, good afternoon. Lindsay Dentlinger from ENCA. The details of the crime notwithstanding, could you clarify why you would not want South Africans to know that you yourself were a victim of crime? And secondly, the Namibian president this week said he didn't do you any favors in the wake of reports that you might have asked for a diplomatic assistance to keep the crime under wraps. He also said that you have a relationship where you call each other up, you don't speak through aides or any others. Can you clarify whether indeed you did call him at the time and ask him to help keep this under wraps? Thank you.
Thank you.
Good day, everyone, and good day to you, Mr. President. I have quite a few questions, but I'm only going to ask. I'm Abungile Boy from Zbonele FM. Mr. President, in your budget vote yesterday, you mentioned that South African economy have grown by at least 1.9%, and the GDP is higher than before the pandemic. And we are still stuck with higher prices of fuel and everything. How is that happening? And secondly, we've seen the fifth incident of mass shootings in Khayelitsha. Is there anything that the national government is doing, maybe gokusebenzisana with the local government in beefing up the security?
On the question from Xinhua News, would we be looking for partnership in certain parts or aspects or sectors of the economy with other countries? And I would think here you would be referring especially China. Of course, we want to see greater and deeper partnership between South Africa and other countries. And China is a country with which we have a strategic relationship at the highest level, which partnership, a strategic one, was sealed a few years ago and continues intact, and in fact has even strengthened over times, and it spans cooperation in a number of areas. Areas where we want to see greater improvement is in trade relations, in infrastructure development, and basically in helping each other, particularly China, as it is the second largest economy in the world, supporting our whole process of development. And China came in very handy for us as a country during the most dangerous period of COVID, when we didn't have PPEs in large number. We were able to request China. I specifically had a number of engagements with President Xi Jinping, and he was able to open up really wonderful assistance processes, from PPE supply to us, also financial support. But China went beyond that. It was also the one country that assisted the continent. We set up the Africa Medical Supplies platform, and as we set it up, I spoke to President Xi Jinping and asked him to get Chinese companies to participate in this platform. The platform helped to reduce prices a great deal for PPEs in terms of masks, sanitizers, ventilators, and a number of other medical supplies that we got from China. So the cooperation and the partnership has been deep, has been meaningful, has been effective, and has been largely beneficial to us as South Africa and also broadly to our continent. What are we expecting with the forthcoming BRICS summit? We are expecting that BRICS summit will obviously do a proper survey of the world situation, the geopolitical situation in the world, and be able to look at that through the lens of the BRICS nations and see how best we can continue with our programs of fostering development, fostering a multilateral system in the world that is going to support the advancement and the prosperity of the people of the world. As South Africa, we will also be looking forward to BRICS living up to the commitment that was made to support our vaccination center. As BRICS, we agreed that South Africa would be the home of the vaccination center that was going to be put up. So we would want that to be something that progresses, and also to deepen trade and broaden trade between the BRICS countries. And of course, we will reflect on the challenges that Russia is going through now, and we will get a briefing from President Putin on the developments in Russia itself. Coming to Bulelani, talking about the counsel that I received, and he asked a whole number of questions, knowing very well that those are questions that I said I'm going to be relying on the process that I have spoken about, that there's due process underway. And obviously Bulelani will always try to sneak in the question under a different title. But I have to say, all these questions are questions that obviously have to do with the process that I have spoken about. Now, you also say that why is the ANC Integrity Commission being put at a much higher level than the people of South Africa? I don't think one should necessarily see it that way. One should see it in a way where the ANC, which is the party that deployed me in the work that I do, has a formal structure, which in terms of the conference that has given me my marching orders in terms of the work I do, I have to go and explain myself to, and I don't think one should look at it as either or type of situation. The one is not much more important than the other. It is just that there is a formalized process that I need to follow, and in time all that will be put forward. Now you want to know if I will step aside because there could be a suspicion that I will interfere with the police, I'll interfere with various others. And we have said that we want the police to investigate whatever crime, whether whoever it is against, without any fear, without any favor, and on an impartial basis. And so if I were to say I'm stepping aside on that account, it basically means that I am confirming that I interfere in the investigative processes, which I must say I don't. And if I were to, it would be demeaning to those officials who work in those structures, because it would mean that they are not able to do their work on an independent basis, and it actually just destroys their own confidence because they will always forever be fearing that they may not follow things up properly because so and so is involved. Because we do need to free our various agencies and expect that they will act as fairly as possible. Just like what I said earlier about the public protector, it is the office that really matters. And the individuals who are in the office have to live up to the principles and the values that underpin the work of those structures. So that's what I would be relying on. Question from ENCA, I don't remember who asked it. Why should South Africans not know? Because I was a victim of a crime. It is part and parcel of what I have said about following due process. Similarly, the question of Namibia, I don't know what the president of Namibia said. What is correct is that yes, the presidents in SADC and elsewhere in Africa, you could say we are on speed dial about various matters that happen in our region. President Geingob and I have known each other for years, and so we speak to each other regularly on a number of matters, security and otherwise and so forth. So the one that you've specifically asked is part of that due process that we were talking about. The question from Abongile Boy, yes, we've seen the GDP growth of 1.9%, and we've also seen 3% growth in fixed investment, which is precisely what any economy would want to rely on for continuing growth. However, as you correctly say, we are seeing higher prices, and the higher prices are given rise to a number of factors that we have no real control over. For instance, the imports that the majority of the imports is fuel. So we are dependent on fuel that we import from other countries. And when the price of oil goes up, which is almost today, I'm told, at $122 a barrel, it basically means that we will feel the effects of it. There was a time, Abongile, when the price of crude oil went to about $140, and we would have seen a price rise at that time. And we obviously forever hope that the price will taper down as the price of oil comes down. And you might recall that the price of oil has come down to as low as $40 per barrel. Now it is at astronomical levels, which is a major concern. That is why government has taken the measures that it has taken to lighten the burden and to take away the effect of the blow of these price increases from the ordinary consumer and drivers. The price of foodstuffs has also gone up, and that I think you could ascribe to a variety of reasons. I think last year prices of potatoes went up because there was too much rain and potatoes started rotting. And so our food prices gyrate up and they come down again. And those are factors that the government per se cannot control. The issue is, what are we doing about it? The central bank itself responds to some of these by dealing with the instrument that they have at hand, which is interest rates. And on the government side, recently you've seen us respond, as I said, by dealing with the price of fuel and releasing strategic stock so that we are then able to assist those who rely on buying petrol. Mass shootings in the Western Cape here, it's a matter of great concern to us. Are we going to beef up security, working together with the local government? Of course. We will always look out for ways in which security can be beefed up. Our focus on security is part of our broader reform processes, where we would like safety for our people, where we would like to reinvigorate structures such as the Community Policing Forum and make our police men and women much more professional, being able to serve the people of our nation with great commitment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. We will come to you, Madam. The microphone is over there, so the colleague, please, shoots off with the question.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody, colleagues, and Mr. President. Thank you very much for attending the opportunity to attend this very important briefing today. I'm Audrey Senegal de Wet. I'm the editor of Business Report. Therefore, Mr. President, my questions are a little bit more business-like. It is regarding the recent ComAir liquidation. And I would like to know from you, Mr. President, why is government letting big companies fail because of a lack of funding, but support government firms like South African Airways? So many big firms with thousands of jobs have collapsed as government won't step in. Isn't it an uneven playground and anti-competitive? And then just the last question, how will government ensure that infrastructure is sufficient to support our exports? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Can you have the mic come down here, please?
Thank you. Just following on the last question, mining companies and obviously the fiscus is losing billions of rand because of the constraints on exports of commodities. Apart from what Transnet is doing, is government taking any action to alleviate the situation? And the second question, sorry. Sorry.
Drain dry.
Okay. No, it's just in relation to the constraints on exports, which is limiting the export of commodities at a time when there's an international boom, depriving the fiscus and mining companies of very much needed funds. So if you could, is government doing anything to alleviate the situation, or are you just leaving it to Transnet? And my second question related to Farmgate, not about the process or nothing about the claims, but your reaction when you read the reports about the complaints. How did you feel? Were you shocked or nervous, or maybe you can just elaborate? And then just finally, on the 350 Rand grant, beneficiaries haven't had it for the last 2 months. Is government doing anything to hasten that payment? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can we go over please to
Good afternoon, Mr. President. Marianne Merton from the Daily Maverick. Quick one. How would you feel about your legacy if your legacy were to be the president who stuffed Forex into sofa cushions? But on a more serious note, with regards to your social compacting negotiations, how are they going? Your budget vote speech yesterday seemed to indicate that things are tense and possibly at a tough moment. I understand no agreements have actually been signed off and sealed, and there is particular concern around the investment levels. While 1.2 trillion investment over 5 years is quite close, these investment levels show that really not anything new is coming in that would be part of a social compact from business side. So investments over and above what is already been counted on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure.
We'll take one more question. Gentleman in the glasses.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, President. My name is Sibonga Shoba. I'm employed by the Sunday Times. Mr. President, this matter is not going to go away. These are very serious allegations that have been made against a man who campaigned on an anti-corruption ticket, who spoke of the new dawn. And right now, it seems as if you are not. Some people may reach a conclusion that you are not living up to that promise. And the more you try to avoid it, the more it's going to explode. Because you are not going to respond to our questions related to this matter, maybe I should ask you, Mr. President, what do you say to a South African who now has a president who is being accused of being a potential money launderer, a tax evader, and someone who stuffs money in furniture? What is your message to that South African? And what do you say to them?
Okay. Cynical debate about Come. Why are we allowing companies to fail? It's a very good question. And you also then attach to that, we, however, support other companies through various means and all that. That's a very good question. In the end, I think it has to do with the resources, the limited resources that government has, and the ability to be able to support these companies broadly. With state-owned enterprises, we usually just issue guarantees, but of late, we have actually had to sign checks, particularly for SAA and as well as ESCOM. But it raises a very important question. I've seen it happen in other environments, in other countries, where when companies fail, they take a view that's too big to fail, particularly when it happened in the US, and then they just printed money and made sure that the auto companies that were about to fail, the banks that were about to fail, bankrolled. And that bankrolling also meant that these were almost like loans which they had to pay back. And because they are very big and they are big cash generators, some of them have been able to pay back those monies. But you're raising a very important question. In the end, for us, it would depend on whether we have the resources or not to be able to give a level of support to a variety of companies. It also raises the question of the type of role we want to play as the state. Do we want to play a much more activist role and support, say, companies that may either be facing failure, but you could extrapolate and go even further or higher. What we did do with the auto sector was to give the auto sector massive support. And the auto sector has become one of the, if you like, crown jewels of our economic or business capability. We export well-made vehicles to Germany, to the United States, and we even export skills from here. South African workers are sometimes exported to a country like Germany to go and teach the German workers how to make a German car like a Mercedes-Benz. And from an IT perspective, our IT in some of the companies we have, like Mercedes or BMW, is at the cutting edge. And the auto sector came to be what it is because it was supported. And we've therefore attracted many original equipment manufacturers from all over the world. They are here, largely on the back of the support that government has given to those sectors, to that sector. And I have been saying government needs to be more activist. It needs to look at various other sectors that should be supported to retain jobs, to create jobs, and through support measures that could range from either tax holidays, that could range from subsidies, that could also include grants, R&D allowances and all that. We could move to another level of real economic growth. The auto sector sustains more than 170,000 jobs. But more importantly, what it has also yielded for us is the creation of your other components manufacturers. And a number of black players are getting into that sector. So much as one looks at it just as supporting the auto sector, it's all-encompassing and it supports more broadly. But you're raising an important question that in the aviation sector, we possibly have been supporting maybe 2 or 3, which are state-linked or state-owned. Could there have been a need to look beyond that? It's a question that we've got to look at. It is always not a good thing for companies to collapse and lead to the destruction of jobs. We need to retain jobs as much as we can. I've been saying to my colleagues that we need to be more industry focused as government. Look at every industry and know every industry in a microscopic way and know what moves and shakes particular industries. And we should not just be at the top level. We should almost be like analysts who will know how every industry functions and be able to compare not only continentally but globally and look at how each one works so that we can understand what the challenges and the needs of each type of sector that we've got in our economy. And I'm hoping that we will move in that direction and be able to be more activist and be more supportive. Whether we own as government the entity or not, it should be seen as a South African entity that requires support. The support could be regulatory, it could be a whole range of, it should be like, nurturing every sector of our economy and keeping a very close watch on what should happen in every sector. Now, I was talking too much. Now, I wrote here sufficient support. The other part of your question was? Infrastructure, yes, I think, yeah. Infrastructure support, particularly for our export-driven, industries. This is what we are focusing our reforms on. When Treasury came up with a paper on network industries and urged us to foster reforms around that, we then set up the Vulindlela operation, which is joint with Treasury and the Presidency. So our reforms are focusing on that because we've done a proper analysis of those network industries, particularly how our ports function. Our ports have declined quite considerably. Ships take far too long at our ports, and there are port operators who come to us and say, we can help you boost the operation of your ports and inject efficiencies. And it is for this reason that we've said to Transnet, invite the private sector. The private sector can play a key role because it is in their interest that our exports should work well so that we are able to live up to better performance results. I mean, you look at Richards Bay. Richards Bay is a very good example where Transnet would have been the sole operator of the coal port. In the end, the industry got together, helped to build that port, the export terminal rather, and it is a cooperation between the public sector and the private sector that has created a world-class coal terminal for our country. And it is in this that we see great cooperation between the public sector and the private sector. So that's why Transnet is now going to give concessions to a number of companies. I think right now they've allowed up to 16 such companies, and a number of them are willing to go in with great investments. It could be the dry port, it could be the vegetable one, or whatever, or terminal, and that I think is going to boost and get rid of the incapacity that has embedded itself in this whole process. And I think I've answered what I thought was your next question. I was writing so quickly, you talked too quickly as well. It was you who said, no, it was someone else who said, was I shocked when I got this, yeah, it was you. Yeah, it was you. Well, when it all came out, I mean, yes, of course, you say, what is this? But then again, it is part of that whole process when we will want to allow the process to unfold so that we're then able to respond more broadly. On the 350, the grant, you asked a specific question. I just wrote 350.
Yes, there's been hiccups in the administration of the grants
Yes.
for April and May. The people haven't been paid
Precisely,
the 350. So what's happening on that front? Thank you.
There were problems, and let me say, when this whole 350 grant started, I quite got involved with the officials and was very concerned right at the beginning, and kept asking them, how are we going to be able to pay this amount? And they said, President, we're working with a number of service providers, and in the end we might have to do it ourselves, and it really concerned me at the time. And then the application started coming through. It was 6 million at the time, and I kept asking, will we be able to pay? They said, President, we are able to pay. We've inaugurated a new system. From scratch, we will be able to pay. People who have cell phones will do this and that. They'll get the number and so forth. That seemed to work flawlessly. And some of them needed to have bank accounts. Some of them could get the money through their phones or something like that. Now, with the second iteration, when we were no longer under COVID regulations, we found that we needed now to do it in a new way, where we would largely bring in the banks, bring in the post office and a post bank, and that started the delays that have ensued. I've now been given a report that they're going to start paying next week. This coming week, the payments will be done, and there will be backdating, because our people have been relying on this. Wherever I have gone throughout the country, people talk about this 350 as they see it as a great assistance intervention. And I think you had also raised issues about the constraints of the ports, and I hope with my earlier answer I did cover that as well. Marianne raises the issue of the legacy. Marianne, it is part of what we have to deal with. It's an issue that will be addressed as this whole due process unfolds. Yes, the social compact process continues, and I'm glad to say that the various parties are crunching down, looking at how we can drive the process to arrive at a compact, and if not a complete wholesome compact, because the other view is that maybe I gave them too short a time. 100 days may well have been too short, much as we've said it is working days. So there is a lot of pressure, and one of the reasons why one put it at 100 days was to exert pressure on the key role players, that the country wants to move, and you are the key role players, get on with it and arrive at a compact. So they are due to report to me, and I will see what comes out of that report. Bilaterals are being held, and of course there are challenges because all social partners obviously have the issues they want to be addressed, and those are issues that have to be arrived at. And the investment levels, that some of the investment commitments are not new. I don't know what that means, because does newness mean some of the investors are not putting up new factories? And of course, if that is the case, that is a great benefit. But some of them are basically saying to us, we're going to invest X billion amount of money, we're putting up a new line of making new cars, different cars, and it's going to lead to employment. It will work on the infrastructure that we have, and we are going to build a new car that we are going to export while we continue with the line that we have. The other day I went to Corobrick, the brick makers, and they had committed to investing $1 billion and more. And when I got there to open their factory, they said, President, that is our old factory. The money that we committed has built this new factory, but it's linked to the old one. And we're now going to revamp the old one, and we will have 2 factories. And both of them are going to produce more product, and we are going to employ more workers. So to me, that's neither here nor there, as long as the money is invested. When companies invest more money, what usually follows in my little knowledge of the business world is that when you invest, usually jobs follow that type of investment. So people get stuck with, is this new money going into new investment or same old investment? I think we should not, be focusing so much on that. We should focus on, is new money coming in? When new money comes in, jobs follow. And it has a multiplier effect. And once jobs are created, other multiplier effects follow. Livelihoods are improved, either more tax, VAT or otherwise. And so the multiplier effect becomes quite handsome. Shoba asks, these questions will not go away. I'm not living up to my promise. We did say that the due process also needs to be observed. The counsel that one got in the National Assembly, as I said in the National Assembly, and you not being a member means that you did not hear it, is that will be given consideration. And yes, of course, the people of South Africa are entitled to know that their president is, one, going to follow due process, and that's, Shoba, what many people are saying. They say, President, follow due process, let this matter be looked into until its logical conclusion, and we are certain that once all that is done, things will be straightened out or will come out. I've been talking too much, but there you are.
Thank you, Mr. President. We'll take one more round of questions.
Yes.
So you may proceed, sir, followed by the gentleman here and gentleman there. No, there's no second bite. Still another question to come.
Good afternoon, Mr. President. Paul Vecchiato from Bloomberg. Your administration's cornerstone has been confidence with the private sector. The 1 trillion rand target is almost met and so on. What the issues around your office and Farmgate and so on? How are you going to reassure that the business community that they should continue to have confidence and that the reforms that your administration has instituted, such as the unbundling of Eskom, will continue? There'll be, you'll see that through. And then secondly, on BRICS, the BRICS summit coming up, would South Africa be in support of proposals to enlarge BRICS? And there have been proposals that apparently Argentina and Nigeria should be included in BRICS. Would you support the application of those 2 countries? Thank you.
Mr. President, Joseph Mosia from SABC. Mr. President, are you worried in any way that, without going into the merits of the issue, that it's actually going to taint your fight against corruption? and that there are these kinds of allegations. Because you said yesterday those who benefited from state capture are going to do are resorting to dirty tricks and all that. Do you think this particular issue could be linked to that? And on the issue of the cost of living of South Africans, there is I'm reading quite a worrying trend that people are struggling to cope. Do you think that the measures that are in place at the moment are adequate? Because many people, while they are not getting, while employment is not rising at fast enough levels, I know you said you were happy with the way it's going. But people are actually in reality suffering at the present. Is government going to do anything more than what is being done now just to alleviate people's lives and livelihoods in the country?
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. President. John Eligal at the New York Times. Just a couple quick questions. First, given what you have conceded, what you have admitted to about the farm scandal, that there was money taken, that you reported to your protection unit, you've said that you did not do anything illegal, and taking you at your word on that, would you still characterize what you did as wrong? In other words, would you, if that were to happen again, do you think you should have handled it differently? Second question, how do you characterize the political implications of this? How will this impact your efforts to get reelected as ANC president? And do you believe that this is something that your political opponents have drummed up and orchestrated in order to undermine you, that it's something that they've blown out of proportion? And the final question, as you know, your Home Affairs Minister is currently, has an operation in Deep Salute to address the immigration issue in South Africa. And what's been going on the ground there, as I'm sure you know, is they've been sending out immigration officers who've been stopping any and everyone, some of them South Africans, asking for ID, and if you don't have it, you can get detained, even if you're South African, unless you produce ID or can prove that you're here legally. Is this method of dealing with illegal immigration, is that in line with your philosophy of how South Africa should be addressing the immigration challenge? Thank you.
Can you take one more question?
Good afternoon, Mr. President. My name is Tseho Lipule with Independent Media. Given that you said that you'll be presenting yourself to the Integrity Committee, will you accept their decision to ask you to step aside? And I've partly been covered by my colleague who asked whether you believe this will hurt your chances at the ANC's national conference at the end of the year. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you. Start with Paul. Will what has happened have a negative impact on investment or blow the confidence of, say, investors? Like investors take their decisions based on a number of factors. They don't look at one issue. They look at a whole range of issues, country risk, infrastructure issues, the regulatory environment, and a whole gamut of issues. And when they go to their boards, that is the managers or the executives, they have to convince the board that we've looked at everything. And no doubt, you know, issues like how the governance processes in the country work, how the political situation and climate is, and all that. So all that is taken into account, and it's put in the washing machine to see whether it yields a particular outcome which will encourage a company to want to invest. So having seen how a number of companies have come forward with their investment pledges and investment commitments, I would imagine that, of course, they themselves will need to take into account a whole range of matters but I don't think they take decisions and base it on one sole issue. So the one issue, yes, has to be considered together with many other issues. So in the end, I really don't think that confidence in investment will be blown. Will South Africa support enlarging BRICS? It is a discussion that we are going to have. We have supported enlarging the membership of the BRICS Bank, and that a number of other countries want to join BRICS speaks volumes about the confidence that many other countries are having in BRICS. They see BRICS as a wonderful, forward-looking alternative to the current blocks that exist in the country, and people see BRICS as a very attractive bloc, political bloc, economic bloc of formation in the world, and that in itself is something that is positive. So we will have a discussion, and we as South Africa have not yet arrived at a decision as to whether other members should be welcomed. And I think one should look at the admission of other members in BRICS Bank as a wonderful stepping stone that could take us somewhere else. So I find that BRICS is becoming attractive, notwithstanding the very challenging times that the world is going through right now. Joseph asks whether this will not taint our fight against corruption. Could this be seen as being linked to, either the state capture process? I really don't think so. But then again, that is a matter that needs to be discussed as part of the whole process. The fight against corruption is so important, and we need to stay focused, because the corruption that we are dealing with is corruption that in the end diminishes the prospects of ordinary people to get services from government, where money is stolen from taxpayers, where money is stolen from government entities to further individuals' nests. So that is what I believe we cannot weaken our resolve on. Cost of living, other measures adequate. Joseph, the government supports 46% of South Africa's population every month through social grants. I know of no country right now on our continent that has such a massive and overarching support process to ordinary citizens of the country, where 46%, you take it that maybe we're 60 million, it's a huge number, close on to 28 million of our people who get support. You could say it's almost like from cradle to 18 years, and thereafter when you're facing the latter years of your life, and even when you're 18, you're then supported with NSFAS again until you finish your schooling. And if you happen to be unemployed at some stage, you fall within the category of the SRD grant or the 350 grant. So this government has committed itself to supporting our people as much as we possibly can, and we will not turn back from that. It's almost, some would even say it's almost like social welfare type of state, and yet not really complete. And then you look at what the social wage is really all about. It touches on areas like education, on housing, on health, and so forth. And we still need to do more on transport and a whole range of things so that the impact of high cost of living is lessened. So your question is this adequate? Within affordable means, this is as much as I guess can be done right now. And we've even demonstrated that even in times of great hardships on ordinary people, like for instance fuel price rises, we've even done the risky thing of saying we will subsidize, we will reduce, it is really a subsidy of some sort. The problem with subsidies is no sooner have you started them, people get used to them and they then steamroll and start going forward. So in our case, the problem is not our will and intention or commitment to support the livelihoods of our people. The problem is resources. And I guess if we had the resources that were sufficient, our commitment as South African government is to give our people a better life. That is what Nelson Mandela promised the majority of our people. And there are those who will argue nothing has happened since 1994. But then they don't begin to analyze and peel, cut this potato and see what is underneath it. On this African continent, I know of no country that supports livelihoods of 46% of its population. So we are held back by our resource poverty. Our commitment we have in abundance. Our intention we have in great abundance. So will government be seeking to find ways to help ordinary people? Yes, if we can have the resources. That is a commitment that we would make. John from the New York Times asks, how do I characterize this? John, that also falls in that category. Almost said something else about the way New York Times raises questions, but you're raising a very sharp question. How do I characterize this? We should be able to address this as part of the whole due process. ANC conference, will opponents not capitalize on this and so forth? That, to me, is part of the whole process of looking at this. The Diepsloot. Diepsloot has been a particular challenge to us. Our people in Diepsloot are the one who cried out and said, there are illegal immigrants who have come in and they have been participating in spades of criminality and so forth. So this was a deeply felt sentiment amongst ordinary South Africans. And what I really liked with what they were saying, we are not opposed to those from foreign lands living amongst us. And in fact, we welcome them. They live with us, but we want people who live with us to be documented, to be permitted to be here, because they have seen spades of criminality amongst what they saw as people who are not documented. Now, clearly, the law does allow, and I checked this with the minister, the law does allow a police official to stop anyone. I could also be stopped and ask for my identification. That's what the law allows. And at one stage when it happened, and I was asked by the media that this is what is happening, and they were even asking people, what is what is the elbow called in one of our local languages, I was incensed. I was literally incensed because I said that is a profiling that we don't want to see or hear about, because that takes us back to apartheid days. And the minister later said, President, I heard what you said, but the law does allow police to ask anyone amongst us for identification. When I was young, just to digress a bit, I was asked for identification. I think I would have been about 17 years or 16. And the apartheid police then were going around the streets of the township where I grew up. And they encountered me and they asked me, where is your pass? I didn't have any. So I was handcuffed to a whole line of people who had been arrested because we didn't have our ID books. And that image came back to me when I listened to what the minister was explaining. So it is a very difficult one for us as South Africans, but at the same time we've got to deal with the concerns that are raised by our people, particularly on those who come from foreign lands, who participate in criminality such as drug peddling and even human trafficking at times, and just sheer criminality at the same time. So we are having to traverse very difficult waters on this whole issue. But what I really am, I'm heartened by is that xenophobia is not part of, if you like, the architecture. It's not part of the whole scheme. South Africans are not xenophobic. I've confirmed that, because they say we don't mind when foreign people from foreign countries come and be amongst us. What we are concerned about is those who come not as for economic reasons, those who come for criminal reasons and purposes. And of course, they do agree that the criminal justice system needs to deal with people like that. Thank you. Oh, yes, Tsecho asked the IC saying step aside. I don't know what the IC is going to say. And the IC, the Integrity Commission, will listen to the story and they have to take their own decision. So I cannot preempt what they are going to say.
Thank you, Mr. President. We're going to take one last final round of questions. I'm afraid I won't be able to provide a second bite. So if you've asked a question, please bear with me. But we'll take this last round and give it to colleagues who have not had an opportunity to pose questions. There's a question over there. You already asked the question. If no one else wants. No, if no one else, then we can finish it.
Hi. Karen Scrimbier, BBC. You've already said, Mr. President, that you didn't steal public money, but the allegations about around money laundering are serious. How would you reassure South Africans who are worried that you are not much better than your predecessor?
Thank you. I take it that's the last round. Thank you very much. Mr. President, that's the last question.
Yes, Florence from the BBC. Yes, I mean it is being said, and the whole range of allegations and insults are being hurled at me, and in the end, it is part of this whole process that I have to go through, which in the end will be the determinant. So I'm relying on this process to deal with this matter, and that's the best I can say to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Thank you, Minister Tumuzende.
Thank you.
Colleagues, thank you very much. That brings us to the end of this meeting. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Oh.
Part of the due process.